This episode of Unfiltered contains discussions regarding sensitive and potentially distressing topics, including violent crime, homicide, and domestic violence. If you or anyone you know needs support, contact Lifeline on 131114.
There seems to be almost an obsession with hearing someone say that they've committed the crime. We've got to break them away from this culture. You've got to put science first. Okay, if you get a confession, you've got to be able to make sure that you can confirm the confession. Where was the victim? Which bedroom were they? You've got to test it because people will make false confessions. That's not the way to go, guys. You've got to put science first.
In a world drowning in wellness noise, fitness fads, and curated perfection, we're here to talk about the reality. This is a space for the experts who have the data and the humans who have the scars. We're stripping away the bullshit to look at the areas of health that don't get enough attention and the evolution of how we'll live tomorrow. I'm Crystal Perkins, and this is Unfiltered, the truth about being human. Today's episode of Unfiltered is titled Violence Leaves Scars You Cannot See. We delve into policing, forensics, psychology, and criminal behaviour. First up, some statistics. Police officers and detectives experience significantly higher rates of psychological distress, PTSD, and burnout compared to the general population due to chronic exposure to traumatic events. These impacts, often termed civilian combat, result from daily exposure to violence, death, child abuse, and domestic crises. Some Australian statistics and health impacts. In New South Wales alone, 1.75 billion, a national study titled Answering the Call recently found 10% of Australian police employees have probable PTSD and 30% have low psychological wellbeing. The rate of suicide among Australian police officers has more than doubled in the past decade. From a global perspective, mental health prevalence. Global health research estimates mental health problems among police include PTSD at 14.2%, depression at 14.6%, and anxiety at 9.6%. To talk about these issues and his experiences, I'd like to introduce our guest today, a man who has navigated some of the most significant shifts in the history of law enforcement and advocates for health and recovery support for detectives and police forces due to heavy burden of serving, dealing with crime, violence, and its reality. From Scotland Yard to leading homicide investigations in the UK and Australia, he was at the front line of the DNA revolution and drafted the legislation that governs how we collect evidence today. Robin Napper is a former UK detective superintendent and internationally recognised in forensics, whose career spans over 3 decades. Robin is now an independent forensic investigator, and beyond the accolades and 32 years of service, Robin joins us to share the raw, unfiltered reality of what it is like working in crime as a detective and what it means to discover the truth when the stakes are life and death. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you for inviting me, Crystal. I must confess, when I heard those statistics from you, it's scary. How on earth have we got into the situation when we've got so many affected and sick people? And I look back at my own career and I think, why aren't I one of those stats? And if you rewind the clock to when I joined the job, I joined as a 17-year-old police cadet straight out of school. And my first posting was the photographic unit because they wanted a big stropping male to carry all the very heavy equipment. That meant anything that needed photographing, you went there. So you were going straight away to fatal road accidents, suicides, and all sorts of things. I went to my first autopsy at 17, setting up the camera, the plate glass and everything. But I had 2 very experienced guys running it, John and Willie. They were both ex-military, but they'd both been through the Second World War. So their life experience was phenomenal. And I now realise they were looking after me. They would ask me, how you going, youngster? How you going, young fella? And saying, don't forget, you are here to do a job. So when you go to somewhere that is really gruesome and traumatic, You're there to do a job. You're there to put the camera up, to get the lighting equipment and lug it about. And I now realise they were watching my back. And they came from a whole generation of people that have been through the war, who've been in the front line, they've been in the trenches. They understood the pressures of that. What we're faced with today, from my perspective, we don't have those leaders anymore. We've got so many senior officers, commissioners and chiefs who frankly have got to the top by being good with the CV, good with the academic learning, good at committee meetings. You don't get a lot of trauma on a Monday morning with coffee and biscuits at a committee meeting. So they've lost the understanding of core business, of what's going on in the front line. And those stats just record what's happening. It's so sad.
Robin, you were at the forefront of the DNA revolution in the UK, and you helped to introduce it across Australia in 1998 to 2000. In 2026, with criminal networks more complex than ever, what has the shift from old school investigative intuition, if we call it that, and forcing confessions to science-driven policing actually looked like on the ground?
It's been too slow, Crystal. We had to do a complete culture change in 1980. Just to give the audience some idea, if you had a blood scene at a crime scene in the 1980s, you could get very little out of that blood. You could get a blood grouping and enzyme count, which meant that if you had 20 suspects, you could narrow it down to 10. Well, what happened was technology came along and they completely broke open the human genome so they could now say that blood belongs to that person. Now, that's huge. That really was huge. And what it meant, we were diving back into the archives, getting all the forensic material out we had. We were re-looking at older cases, and we were coming up with things that used to be off the radar but were now back on the radar. So all of a sudden, overnight, science took over. The old school confessions, the old Spanish Inquisition confessions, this type of thing faded into the background, and you had to run your investigation scientifically based because that was the most accurate way of catching the bad guy.
Very big changes.
Oh, huge. Yeah. The last big change that came around was the turn of the century when fingerprints suddenly became prevalent. I think it was 1903 was the first conviction of fingerprints, because before that you get fingerprints, you wouldn't realise that every single human on this planet has got different fingerprints.
Yes.
Now, DNA is your forensic fingerprint. So if you leave blood, sweat, semen, skin cells, anything like that, we can say that is the person that deposited it. Huge turnaround. And not a lot of police forces have got their heads completely around this yet. They're still hanging on to the old ways of doing things, and they're almost frightened of getting into the brave new world out there.
So even though it's been around for over 20-something years, it's still, people are still grappling with the technology and the science, or
they are for
the
a
application
They are for a number of reasons. I mean, if you take Australia, for example, every state has got its own DNA database. So all your local crims in whatever state you live in are on there. There is a national database called CrimTrack, which was established before the Sydney Olympics, 1999-2000.
Right.
So it would hold all the DNA samples in Australia. So if you go from Western Australia, commit a serious crime and go to New South Wales, if you get picked up and DNA tested, they can identify you. But every state had to bring its own legislation in. And do you know what? They made it voluntary. So even today, it's voluntary. So you as a state don't have to put your unsolved crimes on the DNA database. And you as a detective cannot even put it on the local database, because if you've done something wrong that you shouldn't have done, you can protect yourselves.
Yes.
And the local politicians, they like this because you want the police service to be successful. Miscarriages of justice, people say, oh, they're dreadful, but politicians don't like them because it shows the system's broken and nobody votes for a broken system. So it's had a mixed introduction.
There's a huge amount of room for error and, as you say, malpractice, and then injustice on the other end of it.
One follows the other.
Yeah.
And it has actually happened. And the other thing, of course, is we now realise that you can leave your DNA, say, in a pair of gloves. Okay, you put the gloves down, someone comes along, picks those gloves up, puts them on, goes and commits an awful crime, takes their gloves off at the crime scene, and some of the skin cells in there drop out. Your skin cells drop out in that crime scene. You've never been there. It's secondary transfer. It's a real problem. You've got to make sure that you get the samples nice and clean. You've got to do the history of where the samples came from, because as you say, if not, you could have and we have had miscarriages of justice because of this.
So is there an argument that police should not be on the scene?
Oh, absolutely.
Or first responding? In
the UK, we took all police out of crime scenes in the 90s. Once we realised how important science was and how important DNA technology was, the only people now that go in a live crime scene in the UK are scientists. They'll tape it off, and the first individual in will be a forensic officer in a zoot suit, so he's not contaminated. And they will video the whole of the crime scene, and you'll be watching that video on the outside. You then sit down with your team and your scientists. You decide how you're going to work that crime scene. That still does not happen in Australia. It drives me nuts when I watch the news every night and you've had a crime scene, a murder in a house saying it's taped off, and you've got all these forensic officers going in and out, in and out, in and out. Happens in every state in Australia. And I want to shout to the television screen, get them out. They should be doing the investigation. It should be scientists in there. But Australian police have not yet made that leap.
It leads me to the next question around where do you see the biggest friction today between traditional policing methods and the reliance on DNA databases? So are investigations more effective, or have they created new pressures for detectives?
They're more accurate. That's the way to go.
Right.
Very sadly, I've been involved in a number of miscarriages of justice. The Innocence Project in America has now freed over 200 people from death row because DNA's proved that they were waiting to be executed, to prove that they didn't do the crime because science was not that important. One of the presidents, George W. Bush, he was governor of Texas between 1995 and 2000. And apparently every time they executed someone for a crime, they would then get rid of all the forensic evidence so no one later on could come along and say they got the wrong person. It's all gone. It was all part of their strategy. When I came to Australia and I started talking about you can get these old crimes out, apparently there were floods of older detectives going to the store cupboards, getting out their material and just getting rid of it because it belongs to the Commissioner of Police and that they were operating that way. So we're still in this culture war where that's the brave new world, but we're not actually there yet.
As a former detective superintendent then, leading homicide investigations of multi-varied investigations, you've seen how constant exposure to violent crimes, autopsies, victim statements, and the effects on officers. What patterns do you think you've seen in terms of health issues that you've witnessed in detectives and first responders? What are those patterns over the last 31 years that you've seen based on these investigations and other things?
I've probably seen all of it, but the one that really sticks out for me is how relationships break down, especially marriages break down, because if your partner at home doesn't know what you've been to what you've actually seen, they don't understand. You get a lot of marriages, don't you, into profession. You get nurses marrying doctors, and in the military, you get military people marrying each other. They understand. And I found that if people had a good home base, they could deal with the trauma, they could go home, and it would virtually balance itself out. If you had a bad home base, it just made it worse. And then you get the breakdowns, you get the kiddies that were going at the weekend to see dad and mum and everything. It's a big problem. It's a problem that you can't solve overnight. I mean, I lost my first marriage. My first wife hated the police service. She always knew when I came home, if I'd been down the mortuary, she could smell it on my clothing, and she just chucked me a dustbin bag, take your clothes off before you come in, like that. Now, I can understand that, but there's also, you don't know what I've just seen and what I've just been doing, you know? So my second wife was brilliant. She just understood. She said, bad day at the office, yes. And she just go and get me a beer from the fridge, sit down and talk about it if you want to, you see. So if you've got a good home base, you're very lucky. But then that's the biggest thing I found with dealing with colleagues, dealing with these types of traumatic events.
And how do you think PTSD's played out, or grief, or some of those other things we talked about in terms of the statistics?
Yes.
Have you witnessed some of those health impacts?
It's impacted me as well.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I suffer from now, when I say suffer, probably not, but I get flashbacks that I didn't even realise were still lodged in my brain. For example, this Christmas. I mean, Christmas is usually a wonderful, happy time for everyone, but it can be a very sad, traumatic time for people who've lost people or their marriage breakups and that sort of thing. Remember once Christmas Eve, we were called by the ambulance service to a house where an estranged husband had gone to the house, smashed the door in where his ex-wife and children were, and he had a hammer and he chased the wife around the house and he smashed her head in with the hammer in the front room by the Christmas tree. And when we got there and the ambulance taken her away, all I can remember seeing was brain matter down the Christmas presents under the tree. It was just awful, you know. And I had to help the sergeant and everyone else that was there as well. But you move on, right? I went into a department store last year and I was looking at the Christmas tree, and all of a sudden I was back in this front room 40 years ago because I'd never actually processed that myself. I tucked it away in the side of my brain and forgotten about it. And you're wondering, gosh, how many other skeletons have I got rocking around in my cupboard? I'm just as vulnerable as anyone else on this planet. So that's a scary thing because I couldn't talk about a lot of this. But comes back years later and haunts you.
And what do the police forces or services, overseas in the UK, around the world, here in Australia, what are we doing in those organisations to support officers and peoples with their mental health or their trauma?
Look, throughout the 80s and 90s, there was a realisation that, this was serious. We've got to do something about this. We need to be able for these officers to go and talk to people about it. So certainly from the UK perspective, they said, right, we will hire psychologists in the police service, all right? And what happens if someone does a traumatic event, they can go and see the psychologist, they can talk about it and get some treatment. The problem with that was they were employing late 20-year-olds, wonderfully academically educated, male and female, but they'd never been in the front line. I couldn't sit down at a table and tell them the experience I've been through. The best way I was able to ever discuss anything was someone that had been through the same experience. I just wish police services would engage recently retired officers, on an ad hoc basis, that if somebody has got a problem, they could come and talk to you. It would save them so much money, treatment and trauma, but it doesn't happen at the moment. That's one piece of advice I would give to any commissioner or chief officer anywhere in the world.
It's an ongoing health problem that, as you say, could fester if you don't have the ability to actually process.
Yeah. See, I'm lucky. I've got a big family around me, lots of kids and everything, and with a son in the job, I can talk about it. If you haven't got that safety valve and these skeletons start popping out the cupboard years later, you could be in serious trouble.
You trained as a national hostage negotiator and handled armed sieges and ransom demands.
Yeah.
Can you take us into a specific moment where the life and death pressure shifted from just doing the job to something that left a lasting internal scar?
Interesting question, because I haven't, as far as being a hostage negotiator, everyone I did, I managed to talk them out. I never lost anyone, never lost a suicide, and never lost an innocent person. But there was one rather humorous event. On Boxing Day, Christmas again, Boxing Day, a farmer in a remote farm outside of Oxford decided he'd had enough of his family, he'd been drinking all Christmas Day, Boxing Day, comes in the front room with a loaded shotgun. He was going to kill everyone. One of the daughters ran out, fortunately screaming, and went to the neighbour's house. Dad's gone nuts. He's got a gun. Get the police, get the police. So the police went down there and we managed to put a containment on the house, and he was threatening to shoot everyone in the house. And anyway, bit by bit, on the end of the phone, we were able to talk him down. He let another daughter go. Then he let the wife go till there was only him in the house, you see, which is great. So anyway, it all went quiet. And the hostage commander said, "What's going on in there?" They said, "Right, send the dog in," right? Because dogs are great finder. So they sent the dog in to find out what was going on, because obviously more expendable than a human. And it all went quiet. The dog went quiet. I thought, what the hell's that? So they sent a team in with the ballistic shields, right? They found the farmer upstairs, utterly unconscious through drink. The gun was there. They took the guns away. No damage done or everything. Guess where they found the dog? In the kitchen. The dog had found the Christmas turkey, and a dog being a dog, he'd eaten the whole of this blasted turkey, and he was lying on the kitchen floor with his stomach bulging, legs up like that,
Yeah.
You could train an animal, but they still got these native instincts.
Yeah.
The dog handler never lived that down, because his dog then the dog other than that was brilliant. He was a really good police dog, right? But he liked turkey. And so he got the name Santa Claus. Every time there was a call out, we got Santa Claus coming with you.
Yeah.
But we all had a good laugh because, number one, we ended the siege successfully. Nobody was injured.
Yeah.
We just had a very full dog that took 3 days to digest it all. Humour is a safety valve.
Yeah.
And you laugh and you let all the stress out that way.
Yeah. And you talked before about families and
Yes.
the toll it takes in terms of policing and having a family around you, but also for families of those that have been impacted by crime.
Yes.
So the victims of crime. I'm interested to understand what you've experienced from that perspective through trials or families being confronted by the perpetrators.
Yeah.
And what's the most powerful example you've seen of a family's grief or impact based on the offender's behaviour showing little or no remorse?
For me, that was quite easy, and it was when I first came to Australia. It was the murder of a young Vietnamese boy, 18 years old. His parents had escaped Vietnam by the skin of their teeth. They had one child. They're absolutely devoted to this kid. They gave him everything they had. Tragically, he met a racist gang of thugs one night, and they just killed him there. They had the trial, they were convicted and went to jail. But the impact on that family, the mother would wake up at night and the father would be gone, and she'd wonder where he's gone. He's gone down to the graveyard. He's taken his bed with him, and he's sleeping by the grave of his son, so as he's not lonely. And, Crystal, that really got to me, because being a parent myself, that poor man, his whole world's ended. His wife's world ended for a senseless killing. That really impacted me, I must admit. I really, what words could you say to that family? Nothing at all.
In the cases of trials,
Yes.
how does grief play out from the perspective of the perpetrator and juries or the decisions around?
Yeah, most serial offenders I've dealt with, they're psychopaths. They don't care about anyone else. They've got no feelings. They've got no empathy. They're on this earth as narcissists just to get what they want. They don't care about anybody else. And for a lot of families, trials are important. They want to see justice being done. Don't expect to get any remorse from the killers. You won't. Most of them. They're cold, non-empathetic people.
It's fascinating in terms of psychology and how society views grief and whether perpetrators are showing remorse or not.
Yeah.
Have you seen cases where juries have perhaps perceived that no remorse is a guilty or they're guilty because of it?
It's a strange thing, Crystal. People think they're experts in grief. They think they know how someone should react when some things have done. Grief is a very personal thing. I mean, when I was uniform officers, I used to have to do the dreaded knock on the door when there was traffic out, whatever. And people's reactions are totally different. I had one mother who ripped all the buttons off my tunic. Her son had been killed on a school trip, he'd drowned. Other people just stand there completely blank. They go under. Grief hits people in different ways. I mean, look at the Lindy Chamberlain case in Australia. She didn't grieve the right way. She didn't react the right way. How the hell does anyone know how anyone's going to react, You get trials where they'll play a big play on the fact that he didn't show any remorse, she didn't show any remorse. But people are all so different. You can't use it as a pointer. You really can't. It's way too inaccurate to use grief as a pointer. That frustrates me. I've been through trials when defence counsel have tried to do this and, there's no remorse there at all. But it's part of the criminal justice system.
I'm interested now in terms of talking about or thinking about moving forward in how our organisations or justice industry and policing systems can deal with some of these issues that you've raised. So if you could redesign one part of the justice or policing system to reduce trauma for officers and better support for victims' families in what we've just discussed, what would it be and how would it create a more humane process?
I think from the people that join the police, you have got to retain what I call safety valves, okay? We all need to have humour's one. I mean, you talk about black humour. Every profession gets black humour. Like the dog, they can be terrific releases as well. Number 2, have a hobby outside the job and the family. Mm-hmm. Now, if you were a fanatical stamp collector as a kid or animals or bird watcher, continue to do it. I'll confess, I've done my family history. It's fascinating, especially now with Google Earth. But it was a hobby. I could just take my mind away from everything. So I would say the first thing when you come in, retain that. And secondly, look at this mentoring. It's so important that you have someone that is a mentor, that you can talk to, you can rely on. And I'd like to see the police service engage these people, again, as an ad hoc situation, because that would really make an important change.
Crime isn't just also a law and order issue, as we're talking about. It's a massive public health issue and problem. So obviously with the people that are working in it, but of the families and then, of course, society. Yeah. From your perspective, what do you think the wider ripple effects are on community wellbeing, and where should we be investing more in prevention or early intervention?
Well, let's take the Aboriginal question. I'm an immigrant here. I came here 25 years ago. I didn't know anything about Aboriginals at all, but I've met people that do understand them. And the money that in the past has been thrown at what they call the Aboriginal problem, it's all gone to the wrong areas. You have got to throw money on country, where these kids come from, where their culture is, where their country is. You've got to give them the tools to help themselves, to actually stay there, live there, and to progress there. And it's the same in any culture. I mean, in the UK, for example, we've got Indian immigrants, we've got West Indian, everyone from the Commonwealth used to come in. And it's so important that these people keep hold of their culture, things like their food and that type of thing. Recognise that people are all different, but we all live on the same country now. We could all learn and share so much from each other. But for some reason, it's just not happening at the moment, is it?
And investments into what we're saying around social services, mental health.
Yeah, but on country. Don't throw it in cities all the time. Don't throw it into something because it looks politically good, all right? Yeah. Go out there, understand the people. Policing is about knowing your people and your culture. You have to understand that. And it's the same when you help people. Understand where they need help and then go and give it, on, where it's needed on country. Just don't waste it because it's politically good to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And incarceration rates are very high in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities in Australia, but the repeat offending as well. And then there's the socioeconomic issues of not having enough money or a safe family environment to go home to. And so kids are feeling safer in prisons.
And also they get 3 meals a day, they get a roof over their head. Yeah. They're also universities of crime. I mean, if you put someone in jail too early, they will meet hardened criminals who will teach them how to be an even better criminal when they come out. So they come out even better trained. Yes. We're using incarceration way too early. We're throwing people in jail when we shouldn't be. Some states in Australia now, they're bringing it down. Is it 10 years of age?
10 years of age.
That's just ludicrous. They're children, ludicrous. They're still children, And if you don't treat them like children, they're not going to react. They're going to rebel and you're going to create some very, very dangerous young criminals when they get older. They'll be angry and they'll take it out on strangers and people. And you're creating crime by trying to stop it.
And this is recent. I mean, this is last year that this legislation was brought in Queensland around youth crime.
Yes.
And I know that in the Northern Territory, they're building bigger detention centres. They're pouring money into infrastructure.
I know.
To, incarcerate.
What is it you say here? Rack 'em and stack 'em.
Right.
They think that's the way to do it. Just lock them up. Just keep everyone locked up. Doesn't work, guys, because eventually these people are going to come out and they're even more angry. You're leaving the next generation with more problems, more crime to solve, because you couldn't be bothered to get to the nitty-gritty of it during your time when you could have changed things.
Have you seen any other models around the world in crime prevention that are working or have some sort of
Some of the Scandinavian countries, when people go to jail, they do not cut the families off completely.
Right.
They allow families to come in and visit. They even allow intimate visits, if you like, in caravan, that sort of. Now, some people might be horrified at that. But what they're saying to the inmate is, you are going to have to go out back to this. It's no good being absent for 3 years, your children not knowing you, your wife's gone and run off and found another boyfriend, because she's got her needs the same as you see. We will try and socialise you back into community. Right. Their recidivism rate is much, much lower because they don't come out so damaged. If you put someone in jail for a long time, you damage them, right? And the chances of coming back into society get less and less as they come out. The do-gooders won't like that. Oh, we can't. No, we've got to lock them up. We've got to keep them away. We've got to punish them, Well, there's a balance between punishment and getting them back into society again. You can't lock everyone up forever.
And a lot of public money goes into locking people up.
Huge amount of money. It's expensive. It's $100,000 a year just for one inmate, just to keep them with all the overhead costs and everything like that.
And that's in Australia?
That's in Australia, yeah. That's what they...
Again, another statistic, that is frightening to hear in terms of policing.
Yeah.
So moving to kind of the technological angles, emerging tools like the DNA analysis you were talking about and AI are changing investigations. How are these tools, I guess, acting as a safety net for the innocent while also protecting the mental health of investigators who no longer have to carry quite so much emotional weight?
Look, if you use science properly, right, it's absolute. If you have a blood sample at a crime scene, you collect it properly, you don't contaminate it, you analyse it properly, you can be sure that crime's, that sample belongs to Joe Bloggs, all right? So as an investigator, you think, no, I haven't got it wrong. I'm not sending an innocent man to jail. And your investigation is accurate. I would love them to get into more science. I mean, we haven't had a chance yet, but stable isotope analysis, the isotopic readings that we got in our bodies are fascinating. Right. They can be used to help crimes. Don't even look at it in Australia, There's been a couple of high-profile cases in the UK where they've used stable isotopic readings from bodies to place them in various different countries of the world. I just love science. I mean, you if you use it properly, it's another tool in the toolbox. This is all it comes down to. And it's all about catching the right guys and letting the innocent go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think making sure that legislation and policy keeps up with rapid technology. So I guess as part of those developments, as the tools advance, how important is it, to build safeguards and protect both public safety and long-term health of the people doing this work? Yeah,
it's vital. The more accurate, the more clean the technology, the better the system is. When a system goes wrong, everyone suffers. That's the problem. And politicians don't want to talk about the cases that have gone wrong because no one will vote for them. So if you get the system right, everyone's a winner. That's the reality of it. Junk science is dangerous. I mean, back in the 90s, the FBI, for example, were doing hair analysis and they were saying, that hair root has come from that person's head. It was all junk science. There's no doubt they executed a lot of people in America over hair analysis that was junk science. So junk science is dangerous. You've got to be absolute in what you're doing.
In terms of those tools then, what's the policing culture like in Australia? Are we still relying on interviewing and trying to get, criminals to basically confess?
Yes, we are. And
rather than using the tools.
There seems to be almost an obsession with hearing someone say that they've committed the crime. Number one, psychopaths never confess, so you're not going to get anything like that. But number two, the number of trials I've been involved with now where their first line defence, we put in listening devices, we put it in the house, we put it in the car, we do a phone intercept, we listen to them talking, and it's all driven to hearing them confess to the crime. Those days are gone. I've been involved in defence cases where dozens of people have had phone intercepts on them and listening devices, thousands of hours. Not one piece of evidence ever came out of it. What an utter waste of time. So, we've got to break them away from this culture. You've got to put science first. Okay, if you get a confession, you've got to be able to make sure that you can confirm the confession. So if someone says, I went to such and such an address, I did this, I did that. Okay, how did you get into the address? Well, I broke in the back window and that. Where was the victim? Which bedroom was it? You've got to test it because people will make false confessions. A lot of people, for whatever mental reasons, they'll make false confessions.
So with false confessions then, are we locking up the wrong people?
Yes.
We're locking up innocent people in
Yes, we
Australia?
are. Oh, yes. Yes, we are. That's the answer to it all.
Is it a combination of the practices as well as the political reasons, do you think?
And also juries. Juries love, they're Joe Public, taken off the street, they're put into a trial, but they love hearing people confess. It seems to put a glow on their faces. Oh, they've heard him say he's done it. He must be guilty, A lot of police know that juries like this. So they go hook, line and sinker to get the confession. That's not the way to go, guys. You've got to put science first.
For our listeners who might be first responders, veterans, anyone that's worked in the police force, currently working in the police force, carrying secondary trauma or from witnessing what you've talked about in crimes and investigations or other things, what would you say is a no bullshit strategy in terms of what you've seen used or actually helps to build resilience over time?
Don't be afraid to say how you feel. Do not be afraid. When I left the police and went to work for the university afterwards, I was watching the television one night and my wife said to me, "Why are you crying?" I tears streamed out, and there was a story on the television about an animal that had been killed. And I love animals, you see. And I realised me crying. She'd never seen me cry before. And I realised for 32 years I'd never cried. And all of a sudden I had permission to cry. I'd put down my policeman's hat, the straight face and the tough guy and all this sort of thing. And everything there, I was turning to tears over so many things because for 32 years, don't be afraid to cry, guys. We're all human. Some of the things you'll deal with are desperately sad. Ventilate it then, talk to someone else then. Don't bottle it up like me. Just learn to deal with it at the time and you'll be fine for the rest of your career.
What would be some myths about policing? And it seems like it's glamorous from all the crime drama that's on TV.
That's the problem. It's been tainted by Hollywood.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be Kojak or Sherlock Holmes. I know who's done this, Watson. No, you don't. It just sells books and it sells films. It's totally different from that,
It's not glamorous.
It's not glamorous, no, and it's not solved in 30-minute program either. Sometimes these things can go on for years. I got recently contacted by my old force from a 1991 crime. They've now got a DNA hit. Oh, fantastic.
Wow.
What do I remember about it? What can I tell them about it? Because they're getting better and better at analysing all the exhibits that they've got left.
Wow. And do we practice familiar DNA testing in Australia?
No, we don't. Well,
restricted?
You cannot do it with government databases. If you check a government database and you haven't got what they call a 2020 hit, you're not allowed to do anything else with it, which I think is crazy. If you go to a database like Ancestry.com, you can then research family relatives and you can go back generation after generation because people have signed away on a commercial contract their right to the information. Well, why can't we use that? Well, they use it in the UK all the time for profiling and solving crime, but Australian detectives are not allowed to use it at the moment. It's crazy. But then that's the laws of the land of that. That's federation.
Yeah, which is what we're saying, and that complexity about legislation not keeping up with these issues and reducing crime and injustice. So, that's incredible. Okay, then. So turning back to the past, what advice would you give your younger self the day you joined the police force? What would you say to yourself?
I was lucky I did this. I found a mentor as a very young man.
Yeah.
I kept him when he retired, and it's seen me right the way through my life. So I'd say to anyone joining, find someone you relate to, find a mentor, stay with them. It's a wonderful benefit.
Yeah. And where do you want to see forensic health and investigative excellence in 5 to 10 years' time?
Oh, get policemen out of crime scenes. Just get rid of them. A crime scene should be dealt with by scientists who go in there, who've got a lifetime of training in what they're looking for. They find the forensic exhibits. They then come out of the crime scene, give it to the investigators, and they use the information. At the moment, we're sending police into crime scenes in Australia. They think they know what the scientist wants, so they get that and they give it over. It's putting the cart before the horse. It's wrong. If I can see that in my lifetime, I'll be a happy bunny, frankly. If I could get all these databases together and could get scientists into crime scenes, I would have had a success of coming to Australia.
Today's conversation has just been so insightful, and your experiences have been mixed and varied. Thank you so much for sharing it with us today, Robin.
It's been a pleasure. I hope it helps someone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Unfiltered. Click follow to get notified about future episodes streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Leaving a review helps others find the podcast. And if you'd like to connect, follow me at crystalperkins_1.